August 19, 1943, a hot afternoon in occupied France. The skies above Normandy were filled with the distant sound of Allied bombers. Their shadows quickly passed over fields that showed the first signs of war. At a quiet Luftwaffe airfield near Carpiquet, hidden among thick bushes and old apple trees, a normal patrol brought big news. An American P-47 Thunderbolt, one of those large fighters with a big round engine that the Germans called the Fledermaus because of its bat-like shape, came into view. Its pilot, confused after a high-altitude dogfight with Focke-Wolf 190 fighters, had lost his way. With almost no fuel left, he saw what he thought was a safe spot to land and put the plane down on its belly. By the time German ground teams reached the wrecked plane, the pilot was captured and the aircraft was mostly intact. The news spread quickly. Oberleutnant Nant Vera Schulz, the chief technical officer for Jagdgeschwader 26, the Abbeville Boys, an elite group led by Adolf Galland, was called. As an aircraft engineer who had worked at Messerschmitt before the war, Schulz's job was important but not glamorous. He studied enemy planes, identified their weaknesses, and suggested ways for pilots to fight back. Captured planes were rare finds in 1943, when Allied attacks still felt like tests, not a full-scale invasion. A mostly intact P-47? That was a great find. For months, German pilots had reported encounters with these juggernauts. They described it as a tough machine, 8 tons when fully loaded, diving like a rock and capable of taking hits from 20mm cannons that would destroy a Bf-109. Schulz arrived as the sun set, turning the sky purple. The tires of his truck crunched on wet grass from the morning dew. The P-47 sat on the ground like a felled tree, its green paint marked by shrapnel from anti-aircraft fire and bullet holes. The wings stretched 50 feet wide, and the body was a thick tube holding that famous 18-cylinder engine. Schulz walked around it slowly, his notebook open, while his team of mechanics followed closely. The first thought matched what every pilot had said. It looked ugly. Too fat, too clumsy. A flying milk bottle, as one expert had jokingly called it over drinks. At 8 tons when loaded, it was twice the size of the Focke-Wolf 190's sleek 4-ton body. The engine cover stuck out like a big stomach, and the wings looked as wide as a barn door. How could this heavy machine fly against the Luftwaffe's fast hunters? Schulz, always focused on the facts, ignored how it looked. He concentrated on numbers, how much power it had compared to its weight, how fast it climbed, and where its weaknesses were. Born in 1913 to a family of German draftsmen, he had trained at Messerschmitt, hoping to design graceful planes that moved easily through the air. But the war had changed that focus to hard facts, Bf-109s leaking oil from a single hit, Focke-Wolf 190s struggling at 25,000 feet. American planes were changing the rules. This P-47, with the number 42-2240, had landed after a failed delivery flight, its factory mark still fresh from Republic Aviation in Farmingdale, New York. No battle damage yet, but stories suggested others had flown home from worse situations. Under bright lights that night, Schulz's team went to work. They covered the wings with canvas and set guards to watch for spies. The first step, make a list. The plane's frame had no quick fixes. Strong aluminum skin, rivets straight and even. But the engine cover caught their attention. The Pratt and Whitney R2800 double Wasp, a huge round engine with 18 cylinders in 2 rows of 9, taking up 4,600 cubic inches. Schulz followed the air pipes that led into the body, a complex puzzle of thin metal. "Start with the engine," he said, his voice calm like a tool in his hand. Mechanics opened the panels, checking with flashlights. As screws came loose, the inside of the engine gleamed, the main shaft like a strong metal giant, and the pistons were as smooth as glass. Schulz wrote down his initial observations. About 2,000 horsepower for takeoff, boosted by a turbo system for high-altitude flights. In comparison, the BMW 801 in the Focke-Wolf 190 provided only about 1,700 horsepower at best, strained to its limit with wartime materials. No shortcuts here. No weak metal in place of strong chrome moly steel. No rough welds from factories hit by bombs. This was built to last, with cylinders that could be swapped one by one in the field for quick repairs. A worker let out a low whistle. "Sir, it's made too strong, like it expects to take bullets." Schulz nodded, feeling uneasy. German engines needed careful shop work. This one was ready for rough front-line use. By morning, early drawings filled his notebook. Power lines guessed, weights calculated. The P-47 was not just heavy, it was built tough, like a plane meant to survive battles. Stories from JG-26 pilots came in, jugs diving at 400 miles per hour, taking heavy fire, and fighting back with 8 50-caliber Browning machine guns that could cut planes like saws. Schulz had laughed off such stories before, but as coffee warmed tin cups, doubt began to grow. This plane represented something bigger, America's factories working at full capacity while German ones ran low on fuel. He remembered discussions from test fields in Rechlin, captured Mustangs, hinting at engine secrets. But the P-47? This was a clear warning. As the sun rose over the bushes, Schulz sent a message to Berlin. "Whole plane intact. Check begins now." Top leaders got excited. Göring's staff wanted to find weaknesses to share with the commander. But Schulz felt a change. What seemed like a victory might reveal weaknesses. The milk bottle seemed to laugh quietly at him, standing guard over the coming gaps. In Messerschmitt's clean rooms, he had aimed for beauty. Now, raw power was waiting. The team rested. Schulz stayed, his hand on the cover, feeling the calm of 2,000 horses asleep. Tomorrow they would go deeper, into the double Wasp's center, where facts would reveal the true cost of defeat. Dawn broke grey over the airfield, mist clinging to the P-47 like a shroud. Schulz sipped bitter ersatz coffee from a dented mug, his eyes heavy from a night spent poring over sketches. His team assembled, tools laid out on oil-stained tarps, calipers, torque wrenches, micrometers borrowed from the Focke-Wolf 190 hangar. The engine cowling hung open like a gutted fish, exposing the Pratt and Whitney R2800 double Wasp in all its bulk. Schulz stepped forward, gloved hands tracing the radial's double rows. 18 cylinders in 2 banks of 9, each a fist-sized forge of steel and alloy. "Measure everything," he instructed. "Bore, stroke, compression ratios, no guesses." Mechanics swarmed, lanterns casting long shadows as they plumbed the beast. The displacement hit first, 4,600 cubic inches, a volume that dwarfed the BMW 801's 1,400. Schulz calculated on the fly, scribbling in his notebook. At sea level, takeoff power clocked 2,300 horsepower. With the turbo feeding it, cruise held steady at 2,500 feet. His pencil paused. The Focke-Wolf 190's BMW peaked at 1,750 horsepower, and that was in ideal conditions. With fuel blends Germany could no longer guarantee. This American heart beat 20 to 30% stronger, and it did so without strain. Pistons forged to exact tolerances, rings seated like clock gears. A young assistant, fresh from Rechlin's test beds, whistled as he hefted a cylinder liner. "Herr Oberleutnant, feel this." Schulz took it, the aluminum sleeve cool and uniform, walls 3 millimeters thick, no thin spots from rushed casting. Back in Germany, factories pinched alloys, substituting zinc where chromium failed supply lines. Here, pure abundance, high-grade 85-10-15 aluminum, chrome-plated bores resisting wear after hundreds of hours. Individually removable, the assistant noted, twisting a cylinder free with a socket wrench. No full teardown needed. Swap one bad jug, and the plane flew by noon. German radials demanded days of disassembly. Skilled labor pulled from fronts for hangar miracles. Schulz imagined Luftwaffe squadrons, grounded by a single scored piston, while P-47's cycled back from raids with half their herd intact. Deeper in, the crankshaft revealed itself, a forged behemoth, counterweights balanced to thousandths of an inch, running on 9 main bearings instead of the BMW's 7. Schulz spun a flywheel by hand. It hummed smooth, no vibration harmonics to shake loose mounts at redline. 3,000 revolutions per minute, the double Wasp sang without protest. its sodium-cooled exhaust valves glowing cherry under stress, but not warping. He cross-checked specs from a smuggled Republic manual, tucked in the pilot's escape kit. Water methanol injection for war emergency power, bumping output to 2,200 horses for 5 minutes of dive bomb fury. The Focke-Wolf 190 had no such boost. Its pilots nursed power like a fragile flame. As measurements piled up, Schulz felt the weight settle. This wasn't clever design, it was excess engineered for endurance. The R-2800 drank 100-octane avgas laced with additives, a fuel Germany rationed for VIP flights. And production? Intelligence scraps hinted at thousands rolling off Pratt and Whitney lines in Hartford, Connecticut. Engines not just for P-47's, but for Republic's P-44 and Navy's F-4U Corsairs. One type, one factory rhythm scaled to flood. German BMWs limped from Munich plants under constant raids, output halved by 20mm holes in rooftops. Lunch came late, black bread and watery soup from field kitchens, but Schulz pressed on, directing a compression test. Gauges clicked to specs, 150 pounds per square inch across all 18, no weak cylinders. A mechanic, grease-smeared, wiped his brow. "It's like they built it to last forever, sir. Our 801 sees after 50 hours if the oil's off." Schulz grunted agreement. The double Wasp's oil system alone was a lesson. Dry sump with scavenge pumps, circulating 10 gallons per minute. Filters self-cleaning. No sludge buildup from impure lubes. It assumed frontline mechanics with basic tools, not factory wizards. By afternoon, numbers screamed disparity. The P-47's engine weighed 1,800 pounds dry, half the plane's empty weight, but propelled it to 420 miles per hour at 20,000 feet, climbing 3,500 feet per minute. The Focke-Wolf 190, 380 miles per hour top speed, 2,500 feet climb, its lighter frame a virtue turned vice under sustained load. Schulz sketched thrust curves, the American line flat and unforgiving where the German dipped like a spent wave. "This explains the intercepts," he muttered to his deputy. "They hold altitude, outrun dives. Our pilots fire once, then chase ghosts." Doubt bloomed as shadows lengthened. Schulz had optimized Messerschmitt prototypes for razor edges. Every gram counted in dogfight spirals. Here, the double Wasp shrugged excess, its 2,000 horsepower forgiving sloppy piloting, absorbing novice errors in training pipelines that churned aces faster than Germany could. A captured flight manual confirmed it. Simplified checklists, idiot-proof throttles. While Luftwaffe cadets memorized valve timings, American crews hot-swapped plugs mid-mission. As evening fell, Schulz wired interim findings. Power plant exceeds estimates. Durability implications severe. Berlin's reply crackled back terse. Elaborate on countermeasures. But countermeasures? Against an engine that ran on plenty while theirs starved. He stared at the disassembled radial, its gears mocking in lantern glow. The heart of the Thunder beat a rhythm of inevitability. America's factories unseen but thunderous. Tomorrow loomed the turbo's labyrinth, pipes twisting aft like veins to a hidden lung. Schulz closed his notebook, the weight not just of metal, but of math that cared nothing for will. Mid-morning sun cut through the mist, warming the airfield as Schulz's team shifted from engine guts to the P-47's hidden veins. The radial cylinders lay arrayed on benches like fallen soldiers, but Schulz's gaze snaked aft, following thick ducts that plunged through the fuselage like buried rivers. "The turbo," he said, his voice low. "Open the aft section." Mechanics hauled away panels, revealing a labyrinth of steel. Exhaust stacks funneled rearward to a turbine wheel the size of a dinner plate, its blades a blur of precision vanes. This was no simple blower. It was the P-47's crown jewel, a turbo supercharger system that turned thin air into thunder at heights where German fighters choked. Schulz knelt, tracing the flow. Hot exhaust from the double Wasp's 18 cylinders, glowing at 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit, rushed through insulated pipes, spinning the turbine at 20,000 revolutions per minute. That spin drove a compressor forward, squeezing intake air to twice sea-level pressure, force-fed back to the carburetor. At 25,000 feet, where oxygen thinned to a whisper, the R-2800 still gulped full throttle, 2,000 horsepower unbroken. His deputy, a wiry veteran from the Eastern Front, peered in. "Like a lung on steroids, Herr Oberleutnant. But how do they keep it from melting?" The answer lay in engineering Schulz could only envy. Heat shields of stainless steel, wastegates bleeding excess gas to prevent overboost, bearings of silver-plated nickel alloy, shrugging friction that would seize a lesser rig. He recalled Rechlin trials, German turbo experiments on high-altitude prototypes like the TAR-152, turbines shattering at 15,000 revolutions per minute from thermal shock. Materials failed, nickel scarce, diverted to U-boat hulls, machining tolerances drifting as skilled hands turned rifles. The P-47's turbine, forged in American plenty, blades electron beam welded, tested in wind tunnels spanning football fields. Schulz fired up a borrowed generator, rigging a mock exhaust to spin the wheel. It whirred to life, smooth, a high keen rising then steadying, no death rattle. Calculations followed. At 30,000 feet, the Focke-Wolf 190's mechanical supercharger, geared stages in the crankcase, suffocated, power dropping 30% as air density halved. The Bf-109 fared worse, its Daimler-Benz liquid-cooled inline gasping on methanol mixes that corroded valves. But the P-47, turbo kept manifold pressure at 40 inches of mercury, climb rate holding 2,500 feet per minute, dive speed piercing 450 miles per hour without flutter. "Bomber escort heaven," Schulz murmured. 8th Air Force formations at 28,000 feet became untouchable. Jugs loitered above, swooping on interceptors like hawks on sparrows. The assistant posed the hard question, wiping sweat from his brow. "Can we copy it, sir, for the next Focke-Wolf 190 batch?" Schulz straightened, duct's web mocking him. "Not now, not with our lines." Precision for those veins demanded numerically controlled lathes, tools Germany prototyped but couldn't mass produce, factories crippled by Royal Air Force Lancasters dropping 2,000-pounders on ball-bearing plants. Alloys. Inconel for the hot section, a nickel-chromium blend America sourced from Canadian mines. Germany's nickel came via Swedish barges, sunk by submarine wolf packs. Man-hours? Building one turbo, 2,000 skilled, versus the P-47's line rate of 500 planes monthly, each with a system humming fresh from assembly. As crates arrived from Berlin, calibration gauges, flow meters, Schulz mapped the integration. Ducting routed exhaust without back pressure, intercoolers chilling compressed air to prevent detonation. A single leak, and the engine choked. Here, redundant seals and blow-off valves guarded against it. He thought of JG-26 logs, P-47's peeling off bomber boxes unscathed, while Focke-Wolf 190's trailed smoke from supercharger wine at height. Gallen's own words echoed in briefings. "The jug climbs like a homesick angel." Numbers confirmed it. Service ceiling 42,000 feet. Double the Focke-Wolf 190's practical limit. Lunch broke the trance, soggy potatoes and mystery meat. But Schulz sketched altitude profiles, American line soaring where German curved down. The turbo wasn't add-on, it was doctrine, assuming vast skies over Europe where bombers droned at 25,000 feet, flak thinning above clouds. German interceptors, optimized for low-level scrambles, paid in oxygen debt. "They fight at our ceiling," Schulz told his team, "while we claw to theirs." A mechanic nodded, tools idle. "And their pilots breathe easy up there. Our masks freeze solid." Afternoon brought dynamometer tests, borrowed from a Ju-88 shop jury-rigged to the turbine. It peaked clean, compressor efficiency 85%, no surge. Schulz cross-referenced captured manuals. Pilot notes warned of overboost at low levels, but praised 20-minute full power at height. The Focke-Wolf 190's BMW choked after 10 minutes at maximum, oil temps spiking. This system assumed rotation, planes cycling through repairs, while squadrons flew double sorties. Germany's, grounded fleets from one faulty gear. Dusk gathered as Schulz penned the subsystem report. Turbo supercharger enables sustained high-altitude dominance, replication unfeasible under current constraints. He sealed it, unease coiling. The P-47 didn't just fly higher, it owned the stratosphere, turning Luftwaffe's bomber-hunting realm into kill zones. Berlin's demand for exploitable flaws rang hollow. This was no flaw, but a forecast of skies clogged with jugs. As stars pricked the velvet sky, Schulz lingered by the open bay. Turbine's ghost spin a dirge. Tomorrow, the airframe's bones, damage patterns that laughed at 20mm bites. The milk bottle's secrets piled like unpaid debts, each deeper than the last. Noon haze shimmered off the tarmac, as Schulz turned from the turbo's tangled guts, wiping sweat from his brow with a rag that smelled of oil and defeat. The P-47's aft section gaped open, ducts like exposed arteries, but his focus shifted forward, to the airframe, that massive skeleton of aluminum and steel holding the beast aloft. "Damage survey," he called, his voice edged with fatigue. Mechanics fetched ladders, probing the skin with mirrors and picks. Bullet holes pocked the wings like bad pox. Shrapnel craters dimpled the fuselage from a flak burst over the channel. Yet the plane sat whole, control surfaces intact, no fatal crumple. This bird had taken fire and flown home. Schulz's job was to learn why. He climbed the wing, boot soles gripping riveted plates 2mm thick, double the Focke-Wolf 190's gauge, heavy enough to blunt a .50 caliber round at 300 yards. Beneath, stringers and longerons formed a truss like bridge girders, spaced tight to spread loads. A 20mm cannon strike scarred the left flap, metal peeled but didn't tear through, redundant spars held form. "Overbuilt," his deputy muttered, tapping a spar. "Weight penalty. But look, no cascade failure." Schulz nodded, recalling JG-26 debriefs. Jugs limping from 20-plus hits, while BF-109s spiraled from one. The secret? Designed for survival, not just speed. German frames chased agility, spars shaved to grams. America's assumed hits with self-sealing tanks and armored wiring bundles routing around vulnerabilities. Deeper inspection chilled him. Cockpit armor gleamed, half-inch steel plates shielding pilot from rear and sides, a 7mm thick glass canopy shrugging off pistol fire. The seatback plate, curved to deflect, weighed 50 pounds. Luxury Germany reserved for me 1610s. Schulz slipped into the bucket, gauges framing a view broad as a bomber's. Stick and rudder pedals moved smooth, cables sheathed in flexible conduits that laughed at fraying. Escape hatch above, hinged for 5-second bail. German canopies jammed under stress. "This saves lives," he said aloud, climbing out. The airframe wasn't elegant. It was forgiving, built for green pilots rotated fast, not aces nursed through years. Afternoon wore on with armament checks. Wing panels unbolted, revealing the payload. 8 Browning M2 .50 caliber machine guns, 4 per wing, barrels converging at 200 yards for a kill cone. Schulz hefted a belt. 3,200 rounds total, 400 per gun, incendiary tracer armor-piercing mixes, punching 500 grains at 2,700 feet per second. Firing rate, 100 rounds per second combined, a 2-second burst dumping 200 slugs, enough to shred a Focke-Wolf 190's wing in a pass. The BF-109's pair of 13mm machine guns and one 20mm cannon. 500 rounds max, rate 50 per second. Once spent RTB, the P-47 hosed 30 seconds straight, multiple engagements before dry. Mechanics test-cycled the guns. Dry fire, no jams, solenoid triggers crisp. Ammo bays lined with buffers, belts coiled in chutes that fed without kinks. Schulz paced the wing, calculating convergence. 8 streams braiding into a storm, focal point tuned for bomber bellies or fighter fuselages. No precision needed, he noted, just hose the cone. Reports from aces like Walter Nowotny described it. Wall of lead, planes dissolving mid-turn. German light builds, thin skins, sparse armor, crumbled. The P-47's radial engine doubled as shield, cylinders soaking hits while props chewed on. As tools clattered, a pattern emerged. The airframe's weight, 8 tons loaded, bought resilience, self-sealing tanks inboard, holding fuel after punctures, hydraulic lines doubled, pumps redundant. A flak hole gaped in the tail, yet elevator cables rerouted around it, no hydraulic leak. German fighters, liquid-cooled, nursed fragile radiators. One burst, and steam trailed death. The double Wasp? Radial toughness. Shoot 3 cylinders, it flew on 15. Schulz thumbed a repair manual. Field patches with canvas and dope back in sky by dusk. Luftwaffe overhauls? Weeks in barns. Sun dipped low, shadows pooling under wings as Schulz tallied. Durability metrics. P-47 absorbed 5 times the hits of a Focke-Wolf 190 before fatal. Firepower, 3 times the throw weight, sustained. They trade speed for staying power, he told his team, closing the notebook. Pilots traded dogfight loops for boom and zoom dives, jugs pouncing from above, guns blazing in shallow passes. The milk bottle didn't dance, it hammered. Dinner, canned sausage and hard bread, tasted of ash. Schulz wired updates. Airframe exhibits exceptional redundancy. Armament overwhelming in volume. Berlin's echo. Quantify countermeasures. But against a plane that ate punishment and spat death. He stared at the scarred hulk, its ugliness a virtue. The turbo owned heights. This frame claimed survival. Tomorrow, the full report, numbers marshaled like troops, marching toward truths Berlin might bury. As crickets chirped in the dusk, Schulz felt the airframe's quiet strength, a testament to factories unbombed, workers unstarved. The Thunder's bones whispered, not just a fighter, but a symptom of the storm. Twilight deepened over the airfield, the P-47 a hulking shadow under arc lights that buzzed like angry wasps. Schulz gathered his notes in the cramped Quonset hut, papers strewn across a trestle table, scarred by years of maps and manifests. The air smelled of ink and stale smoke, his pipe's bowl glowing as he puffed, staring at the compiled dossier. Engine metrics screamed excess, 2,000 horsepower from a radial that laughed at altitude. Turboducts a maze of unbreakable heat. Airframe a fortress of redundant steel, wings cradling 850 caliber Brownings that spat death in endless belts. This wasn't one plane. It was a symptom, a steel herald of factories humming across oceans untouched by the Reich's grasp. He drafted the summary by lantern flicker, words measured as calipers. The P-47 Thunderbolt integrates components of superior sophistication. Pratt & Whitney R2800 double Wasp engine yielding 2,300 horsepower at takeoff. Turbo Supercharger maintaining output above 25,000 feet. Airframe absorbing multiple 20mm impacts. Armament delivering sustained firepower exceeding Luftwaffe standards. Then the sting. German replication infeasible due to material shortages, manufacturing complexity, and production constraints. Tactical recommendation: evade high-altitude intercepts, attrition rates projected unsustainable. Schulz sealed the envelope, wax dripping like blood from the candle. Truth unvarnished, dangerous in a regime where doubt was treason. Dawn brought a courier plane. Messerschmitt Bf 108 droning low to snatch the packet for Berlin. Schulz watched it climb, a speck against the clouds, carrying his verdict to Göring's warren of aides. High Command craved flaws to brief the Reichsmarschall. Perhaps a turbo weak to sabotage, or guns jamming in cold. But the report offered none. It painted a foe built for endurance, not elegance. Days stretched to a week, silence from the capital broken only by routine orders. More sorties over the Ruhr, fuel quotas slashed again. Then a terse radiogram. Report received. Analysis concurs on technical merits, strategic implications under review. No questions, no demands for prototypes, filed perhaps in some vault with other inconvenient scrolls. Schulz cornered his commanding officer over lukewarm schnapps in the officers' mess, the room dim with blackout curtains. Oberleutnant Harlinghausen, grizzled from channel sweeps, swirled his glass. Berlin calls it overly cautious, Nant. They want victories, not ledgers. Schulz pressed. The numbers don't lie, Herr Oberleutnant. 1 P-47 requires resources for 3 Focke-Wolf 190s, and they're building 500 a month. Harlinghausen sighed, face lined like old leather. Göring believes in the pilot's eye, the sharp turn. not American assembly lines. Revise if you must. Tone down the production gloom. But Schulz refused, honoring the oath to facts over flattery. Whispers spread. The engineer saw ghosts in American rivets, defeat in horsepower curves. As weeks blurred, the captured bird became a grim mascot. JG-26 pilots snuck glances during scrambles, dubbing it Die Milchkuh, the milk cow, fat but unkillable. Sorties over England mounted. Returning aces tallied jugs in 2s and 3s, diving from contrails, Brownings stitching the sky. One pilot, fresh from a bounced escort, described it in debrief. Fired my 20mm square, holes everywhere, but it banked hard, came back spitting, took my wingman. Schulz cross-checked the claim against his damage logs. Yes, the radial cylinders would soak it, turbo keeping climb while the wounded bird fled at 300 miles per hour. Berlin's full dismissal arrived mid-September, couriered by motorcycle. Report archived. Focus on tactical bulletins, emphasized Luftwaffe superiority in maneuver. No rebuttal, just erasure. Schulz burned a copy in his stove that night, flames licking pages of turbo schematics. The original, buried with warnings from Canaris on U-boat losses, Speer's memos on steel shortfalls. Ideology trumped arithmetic. A Führer who scorned Materialschlacht heard only cheers. Galland, briefed obliquely, sent a note. Your work noted, keep feeding the wolf, perhaps it'll turn. But wolves starved on milk bottles' milk. Post-war, when Allied archives cracked open like eggshells, Schulz's math proved profit. Interrogators from Wright Field pinned him in a Bavarian villa, 1945, uniform threadbare. That report, the American major said, flipping yellowed pages, you saw the end from one wreck. Schulz, gaunt but steady, met his gaze. From the engine alone, yes. 2,000 horsepower, mass-produced. Germany built 250,000 engines total, most under 1,000. America? 125,000 R-2800s just for radials. The major nodded. Figures matched. 300,000 American planes from 1940 to 45 against Germany's 94,000. P-47's alone, 15,600, outnumbering Bf-109s and Focke-Wolf 190s combined. Schulz elaborated over coffee. Black, real, a luxury lost. The turbo demanded Inconel we couldn't mine. Lathes bombed in Schweinfurt. Airframe? Aluminum from bauxite America guarded like gold. We scavenged pots. The major leaned in. And the leadership? Bitter laugh. Denied it. Better Aryan will than factory counts. My report joined the Führer's ignore pile. Declassified cables confirmed. Goering dismissed it as engineer's pessimism, echoing dismissals of Speer's production pleas. The P-47's saga sealed the tale. 15,600 built. They clawed air superiority. D-Day covers, Ardennes sweeps, Berlin pokes. Jugs with half-cylinders gone landed safe. Focke-Wolf 190s trailed glycol smoke from one burst. Production's ghost-haunted, Republic's Farmingdale line, retooled autoplants churning engines like Ford's spat cars. Pratt and Whitney, aided by Chevrolet and Ford, flooded skies while BMW choked on raids. Schulz walked free, a footnote in victory's ledger. He faded to civilian drafting in the Ruhr, sketching tractors where fighters once danced. But in quiet moments, the milk bottle lingered, a grotesque prophecy, its 2,000 horses the drumbeat of defeat. Germany lost not in dogfights, but drafting tables where numbers bowed to no man. The Thunder's capture birthed no counter. It birthed clarity, ignored till rubble choked the runways. In 1945's ash, Schulz knew, wars of will crumbled under wings of plenty.